fertilizers is also an opportunity if we can leverage the low-cost electricity that can be generated from renewables in an African context. When it comes to minerals, coming back to the technology, for example, that's, shall we say, being predominantly proposed to produce hydrogen, so this electrolyzer, and there's a number of different variations, but just to give you an example, we have so-called proton exchange membrane electrolyzers which use iridium and platinum, so very scarce, very expensive metals within those devices to essentially catalyze the reactions that are interested in terms of splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. And these metals, for example, number one, are scarce. They're on the critical raw materials lists all over the world, essentially. But as an opportunity in Africa, and in that context, iridium specifically, and also platinum to a slightly lesser degree. In South Africa, for example, we have, I think, over 60%, 70% of the world's global reserves of iridium and platinum. Conversely, at current usage, shall we say, loading of iridium in conventional on-the-market technologies for PEM electrolyzers, if we were to deploy the technology, just in the European context, taking PEM electrolyzers, given the plans at the European level targeting 2030 to 2050, we would consume those resources by 2 times just to supply electrolyzers in the European context, not considering the global context. Therefore, in principle, from a strategy and innovation perspective, there is the opportunity to use those resources, hopefully equitably, so that local communities can receive the value in some way. For example, the big mines in Springs, Impala Platts, for example, these kind of things are often owned by multinational companies, so there's that extra dynamic in terms of bringing value to local communities in Africa from natural resource utilization. But there's also the innovation perspective in terms of developing technologies and concepts for recycling electrolyzers at the end of life, and therefore generating value in that context. And maybe just to summarize, before I think we should consider making hydrogen, we should somehow merit order everything in the context of we should be focusing on electrification first, and then to make sure that we have electrification across the board, accessibility to low-cost electricity for all, and then to look at where we can, shall we say, profitably and equitably and ideally environmentally or ecologically sound routes to produce hydrogen when, for example, we have enough essentially very, very low-cost electricity available, and it shouldn't be prioritized over the access of electricity to communities, for example.
Thank you for that explanation. It's very important that we don't prioritize hydrogen production. I think that brings me to the grid. Prof. Naidu, what are the challenges and enablers in accelerating the smart grid transition so that we could then be able to add the flexibility, the power to X that, we saw as some of the pathways, including the green hydrogen production?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's an important one. So the best way to answer this is to look at our traditional grid. We've got a traditional grid that's grid constrained, that where our infrastructure is falling apart to some extent, and many other challenges, access to electricity and so forth. I think it's a very exciting time as far as the energy sector is concerned, because if you look at what's happening around the world and the disruption that's happening, it's absolutely amazing. So it can literally transform Africa from where we're at, where we're grid constrained or don't have access to electricity, to a point where everyone has access. We're managing our grid well. It's a self-balancing, it's self-managing. I mean, that's the ideal, that's where we want to go to. But obviously, if you look at our current grid, there's a lot of challenges. And, we've done the smart grid roadmap with Sanedi in 2022, 2023, and you're welcome to contact Sanedi to get access to the document. But, given the challenges that we have and where we want to go to, we looked at 3 key areas that would need focus from us. So the first area is on asset management. Now we know that municipalities are really battling to manage their assets, and part of the problem is you have a lot of, in the past you used to have really experienced and skilled staff that have been in the organization for 20, 30 years, and they would know if a transformer is humming a certain way, they would know, what type of fault the transformer has. And unfortunately, we've reached a point where there is a skills gap, but that can be addressed through condition monitoring, digital twins, and so forth. So that's a huge enabler. We see that being a huge enabler for the grid. The other focus area that we looked at is renewable energy. So, access to grid being a huge problem, and we saw renewable energy as being a solution to that problem. There's already a number of pilots that are happening around the country where you've got decentralized grids, either in microgrids or just off-grid topologies, where there is access to communities that would otherwise take maybe 10, 20 years to get to. So that's a huge area that the grid or the continent can transform. And if you've got energy, you've got economic development, there's a direct correlation. There's been many studies that's been done there. So that's really the second focus area, is how do we accelerate renewables? And if you look at, so from an asset management, digital twins perspective, you also need communication technology. So the third focus area we looked at was advanced metering infrastructure. Now, there was some mention of that from the earlier participants. Now, in order to get AMI in place, it means that you have to have meters. Meters require capital investment. So you need to put together a lot of, you need to really put a lot of finance, ensure that the finance is in place to procure the meters, have it installed, have your back-end system, head-end system, meter data management system in place to be able to get all that information. And I mean, the information that you're going to get is rich. You're going to have voltages, currents. You're going to know whether the grid is constrained. And then in that way, you can start moving towards a virtual power plant. Now, in a virtual power plant, you're going to have, on the one hand, you have your traditional grid, where you've got all these sensors. On the other hand, you've got renewable energy that also has sensors installed. You'd be able to forecast when, what the weather patterns are, what your predictive, how much of energy you're going to get for a particular day, next day in advance. You've got battery storage that can be brought online. And in South Africa, we've got, the hexing system in the Western Cape. That's 20 megawatt, 100 megawatt hour system that's already being piloted, and obviously there's huge opportunities for scaling up. And then you've got demand response on the other hand. Now, the really smart grids, what smart grids does is it brings all of these technologies together, and it brings it in a way that everything can work together in harmony. So we see smart grids as a huge enabler for accelerating the energy transition in South Africa. Not just in South Africa, but in Africa. Now, obviously, it would be much better if we can, because there's a lot of things that need to fall in place in order to enable this. We need to, have finances, and triple Ps would be a huge plus for us in accelerating the transition. Working together with the continent, we've already got many power pools within the African continent, but I think just leveraging on harmonizing standards and so forth would give us a huge advantage. And obviously alignment, so if we work together, we can accelerate this. And together with our international partners, obviously it's going to make a huge difference in enabling Africa to go that much further quicker. Thank you, Peter.
Mr. Khan, your previous or your presentation that you made was in digitization is quite close to Prof. Naidu's input right now. I just want to find out if this concept is not going to deepen inequality. I'm talking about access to data, the cost. I'm also just thinking about how the technology is accessible. We are trying to transition and enable sustainability in the continent. All these technologies come at a cost. What could be that pathway that doesn't leave people behind or deepen the inequality? What would you say? Is that something that you touched on in your studies? Your perspective on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Peter. In terms of that inequality gap and understanding the cost of digitizing, you know, as South Africa, if we look at the South African context, you know, if one has to completely roll out an advanced metering infrastructure solution throughout the whole country, you are looking at in excess of 90 billion rand, I think, some of my calculations, right? And so the way one deploys this technology, we've got to be very smart and strategically think about how we focus investment on priority points or priority customers. And, you know, as part of the report that we mentioned and we encourage everyone to read, one of the opportunities that we see in the country is if there was an investment on looking at all the large power users in South Africa, and if I estimate them very roughly through looking at the Eskom distribution grid and the municipal grids, you know, I'd put the number at about 100,000 large power users versus probably 8 to 9 million, you know, users in South Africa. So they're quite a small percentage, right? And if one really invests in your smart meters, your smart breakers, your various sensor technology on those particular segments, holistically and completely, you could very quickly digitize the grid, up to 80% of the grid very quickly, right? And that doesn't require 90 billion. That requires much less of an investment, maybe 2 billion rand worth of investment. But the benefits that one will get out of that is far-reaching, far beyond what we can think. And it will enable the country to apply various use cases when it comes to renewable energy integration, whether it be loss identification. You know, often I see in a lot of the newspapers, you know, we take a particular area, you know, Soweto or this area, and we're not collecting money, and there's lots of losses, etc. But you know, you just need one large power user to commit an act of crime and steal very sophisticatedly the power. And that's the equivalent of thousands and thousands of homes. So when you have the technology to actually monitor that large power user, you can drive efficiencies in the country unlike before. So by sorting out that particular customer segment and driving the benefits for utilities like Eskom and the municipalities, you're going to find that the benefits, you know, the revenue benefits, the loss reduction benefits, etc., you're going to use some of those benefits to actually assist in funding much wider rollouts of metering technology, smart metering technology, sensor technology, to those customers, you know, that might not look like there's a business case to do that. And in turn, you know, when one does need to apply load control through what Professor has mentioned now, you know, you've then got that technology there and available and implemented. You know, similarly, you know, like when we look at the transmission grid, and there's a big discussion around bringing private sector investment, we're also going to need that on the distribution grid and around the metering side. And coming up with very innovative financing models, I think is going to be the order of the day. We're seeing a lot of that in the municipal environment, just given some of the circumstances we find some of the municipalities in. And again, you know, these kind of cross-subsidization models where there's a big focus on correcting all the large power users within your respective grids, and making sure you bring those losses down. You know, as a practical example, one of the municipalities I work for, you know, we by very targeted interventions, revenue enhancement interventions using AMI technologies and various types of analytics. You know, we were able to identify customers that owe the municipalities about $500 million, one customer. You know, so that's what you're dealing with. So I think the way to sort the inequality gap is to really focus on one of the customer segments and correct those. Those are the large power users, and to apply the benefits that one will obtain out of that in subsidizing your technology rollouts to, let's say, your medium to your small power users, and then to just carefully look at the various innovative financing models that one can apply within the country slightly more holistically and in a very pinpointed approach.
Wow, thank you for that response. Definitely looking at different financing models. I have a question for Ms. Onaisi. You spoke about the industrial hubs. What role can sustainable industrialization hubs play as catalysts for energy access and low carbon development?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed. So, as I briefly presented, these industrial, sustainable industrialization hubs, they have a concentrated energy demand coming from the clustering of the enterprises in one geographical area. And therefore, they create a very attractive environment to invest in energy, clean energy, and shared infrastructure, like renewable energy or energy storage, etc. So they enable to plan an integrated energy system that match industrial demand with clean energy sources. And this provides a stable and reliable source of energy for the enterprises, for the industries, and also the surplus could be distributed to surrounding communities. So this is beneficial both for the industries themselves and the nearby communities. So, so this embedded generation of renewable energy on site is what enables for this reliable energy access, and this is particularly crucial for regions that suffer from challenges with energy access. The second point with sustainable industrialization hubs is that so by integrating these clean energy sources in the industrial processes, and also including energy efficiency and circular economy principles, etc., they enable the production of low carbon final products. And this is especially crucial for international markets where we have more stricter policies trade policies and climate policies. So having low carbon products is very important for exports and for opening up international markets. And the third point is that these hubs can also serve as like centers for clean tech innovation, so for manufacturing of clean tech components. So they really become like focal point or like hubs for green innovation. And this will create green jobs and stimulate skills development as well. Lastly, to achieve the potential of these sustainable industrialization hubs, there are multiple factors that need to be taken into consideration. So, first, data-driven analysis to support decision-making, and we talked a lot about data and the role of AI, also with, like what Rashid was saying before, how AI and data can drive sound decision-making. We need well-designed policy frameworks and a governance structure for these industrial hubs to encourage investments. And of course, we talked about innovative finance models. So this is crucial because it requires high level of capital mobilizations and also appropriate mechanisms to allow for global technological dissemination. Thank you.
So, will it also be possible to encourage trading within the industrial hubs as well? Is that one of the considerations? I'm just wondering if, you know, when you have an industrial hub, a number of businesses there, and they are generating power for self-consumption, would they also be able to trade amongst themselves?
Yeah, that's the idea, to have the power for themselves and also trade it, and also to distribute for outside business.
Okay. I have a question for Prof. Wang. It relates to our energy resources. In Africa, we use we have a lot of fossil fuels, but we also have a lot of renewables. So how can Africa harmonize primary and renewable energy resources with environmental priorities to drive sustainable development?
Okay, thanks for your questions, Peter. Yeah, that's really a question we are more clear about. Yeah, based on my experience in China, we has the resource like coal, similar with Africa, and how we, in the energy transition process, how we harmonize the primary energy and renewable energy based on this protecting the environment. Yeah, that's really that's really a dilemma, and in the future how we draw these questions. I think first for the Africa, there is very rich in the renewable energy, and I think I have three aspects for answer these questions. Okay, I think first is now global countries all try to reform this energy system. Certainly, the renewable energy the cost of renewable energy is more decreasing than before, and second, primary energy certainly is compared with the renewable energy. If we ending the carbon cost, the renewable energy is more competitive, and still, for the renewable energy development, it is not only supply the energy for economy, it is still a new industry, And based on this renewable energy development for Africa, it can develop more like a green industry, from the silicon or wind power installation. A lot of, the Miss said, it can create a lot of green jobs. That's very helpful for the green, for the economic development. The third, I think that how we see this energy transition, certainly it is economic and society and still energy system transformation. It is a new revolution for the new economy. So how we using this renewable energy to develop the circular economy, like how we see the wind energy and the solar panel and the batteries through the life cycle analysis and do this assessment. That can be helpful to reduce the air pollution. The fourth, I think that we do not only help the government to do the energy planning, we still to improve the government governance. If the government can allocate different targets for the province and for different, created a very good environment to attract more environment, to more investment, that's really helpful to manage this industry, and we can develop the ecology-oriented development mode. That's really very helpful for develop this industry. And based on this opinion, I want still propose that if how we do this, certainly it is we need to more pay attention to the technology transfer and still capacity building, and still like other panelists said, how we attract more investment and finance. Maybe the new financing, not only the public, but still the private fund. So that's in the future, we want to get the green future. Certainly, like China has developed a lot of new technologies, like other countries, all have own new technologies. But how we transfer this new technology to be the industry, to be on land, on this Africa, that's our our common sense on this. So we think we can work together to do this business and to do this, make this Africa more greener and more cleaner. Yeah, that's mine. For these questions, and we can get more co-benefit for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would have wanted some questions from the audience. However, we are running out of time, and we started our session a little bit late. I would like to really thank our keynote speakers and the panelists for their insights. These topics, you cannot exhaust them in 1 hour or 1.5 hours. They need more time. So I want to believe that some discussions can still continue with the panelists now that they've been introduced to all of you. And so I really want to thank them for their participation, and to the audience as well for listening. I think for me, there are just a few key takeaways. Everything requires financing. We need to look at financing models that are going to bring down the costs and make sure that the transition is equitable as it's supposed to be. Our policies are going to help in making sure that happens. We have to look at different ways of industrialization, especially when it comes to the minerals and the resources that Africa is endowed with. So with those few remarks, I really want to thank everyone for attending our session, and wish you a good afternoon further. Thank you so much.